All right. Welcome to another edition of That's a Good Cup of Joe Constitution Federalist Papers edition. All right. So we've been rallying through 1 through 5 right now. We are now up to Federalist Paper number 6. Now this goes into concerning dangers from dissensions between the states. Now we've been discussing about the foreign governments and how their association, could be positive or bad, and with the different numbers confederacies as opposed to one united government, the possibilities of undermining such connections may be there, and how important it is that if we are to do things together, we'd be better off, and that we can be more focused in establishing treaties of the like and protections against war if necessary. So, we're going to get into Federalist number 6 concerning dangers from dissensions between the states. And again, for the Independent Journal, the author of this one is Alexander Hamilton. All right. No, I can't sing like him. Well, in any case. All right. To the people of the state of New York. The 3 last numbers of this paper have been dedicated to the enumeration of the dangers to which we should expose in a state of disunion. From the arms and arts of foreign nations, I shall proceed to delineate dangers of a different and perhaps still more alarming kind. Those which will, in all probability, flow from dissensions between the states themselves and from domestic factions and convulsions. These have been already, in some instances, slightly anticipated, but they deserve a more particular and more full investigation. A man must be far gone in utopian speculations who can seriously doubt that if these states should either be wholly disunited or only united in partial confederacies, the subdivisions into which they might be thrown would have frequent and violent contacts with each other. To presume in want of motives for such contests as an argument against their existence would be to forget that men are ambitious, vindictive, and rapacious. To look for a continuation of harmony between a number of independent, unconnected sovereignties in the same neighborhood would be to disregard the uniform course of human events, and to set at defiance to accumulate experience of ages. The causes of hostility among nations are innumerable. There are some which have a general and almost consistent operation upon the collective bodies of society. Of this description are the love of power or desire of preeminence and dominion, the jealousy of power or the desire of equality and safety. These are others which have a more circumscribed through an equally operative influence within their spheres. Such are the rivaliships and competitions of commerce between commercial nations. And there are others, not less numerous than either of the former, which take their origin entirely in private passions, in the attachments, enmities, interests, hopes, and fear of leading individuals in the communities of which they are members. Men of this class, whether the favorites of a king or of a people, have in too many instances abused the confidence they possessed, and assuming the pretext of some public motive, have not sculptured to sacrifice the national tranquility to personal advantage or personal gratification. The celebrated principles in compliance with the resentment of a prostitute at the expense of much of the blood and treasure of this countryman, attack, vanquish, and destroy the city of the Simians. The same man, stimulated by private pique against the Magirseians, another nation of Greece, or to avoid the prosecution with which he was threatened as an accomplice of the supposed theft of the sanctuary Fides, or to get rid of the accusations prepared to be brought against him for dissipating the funds of the state in the purchase of popularity, or from a combination of all these causes, was the primitive author of the famous and fatal war distinguished in the Grecian annals by the name of the Philippian War, which, after various vicissitudes, intermissions, and renewals, terminated in the ruin of the Athenian Commonwealth. I'm so sorry I'm tearing up these words. I just can't get them. I'd be trying. But let's continue. The ambitious cardinal, who was prime minister of Henry VIII, permitting his vanity to aspire to the triple crown, entertained hopes of succeeding in the acquisition of that splendid prize by the influence of the Emperor Charles V, to secure the favor and interests of his enterprising and powerful monarch. He precipitated England into a war with France, contrary to the plainest dictates of the policy, and at the hazard and the safety of independence, as well as the kingdom over which he presided by the councils, as of Europe in general. For if there was ever a sovereign who bid fair to realize the project in universal monarchy, it was the Emperor Charles V, of whose intrigues Wolsey was at once the instrument and the dupe. The influence which the bigotry of one female, the petulance of another, and the cabals of a third, had the contrary policy, ferments, and pacifications of a considerable part of Europe are topics that have been too often descanted upon, not to be generally known. To multiply examples of the agency of personal considerations in the production of great national events, either foreign or domestic according to their directions, would be an unnecessary waste of time. Those who have put a superficial acquaintance with the sources from which they are to be drawn will themselves recollect a variety of instances, and those who have a tolerable knowledge of human nature will not stand in need of such lights to form their opinion either of the reality or extent of that agency. Perhaps, however, the reference tending to illustrate a general principle may with propriety be made to a case which has falsely happened among themselves. If Shea had not been a desperate debtor, it is much to the doubt whether Massachusetts would have plunged into civil war. Notwithstanding the concurring testimony of experience in this particular, there are still to be found visionary or designing men who stand ready to advocate the paradox of perpetual peace between the states. Though dismembered and alienated from each other, the genuine genius of republics, say they, is specific. The spirit of commerce has a tendency to soften the manners of men, and to extinguish those inflammable humors which have so often kindled into wars. Commercial republics like ours will never be disposed to waste themselves in ruinous contentions from each other. They will be governed by mutual interests and will cultivate a spirit of mutual anonymity and concord. It is not, we may be asked these protectors in politics, the true interests of all nations to cultivate the same benevolent and philosophic spirit. If this be their true interest, have they in fact pursued it? Has it not, on the contrary, invariably been founded that monetary passions and immediate interests have a more active and imperious control over human conduct than general or remote considerations of policy, utility, or justice? Have republics in practice been less addicted to war of monarchies? Are not the former administered by men as well as the latter? Are they not aversions, predilections, rivalships, and desires of unjust acquisitions that affect nations as well as kings. Are not particular assemblies frequently subject to the impulses of rage, resentment, jealousy, avarice, and of other irregular and violent propensities? Is it not well known that their determinations are often governed by a few individuals in whom they place confidence, and are, of course, liable to the tentature of the passions and views of those individuals? Has commerce hereunto done anything more than change the objects of war? Is not the love of wealth as domineering and enterprising a passion as that of power or glory? Have there not been as many wars founded upon commercial motives, since that has become a prevailing system of nations, as were before occasioned by the culpability of territory or dominion? Has not the spirit of commerce in many instances administered new incentives to the appetite, both for the one and for the other? Let experience, the least fallible guide of human opinions, be appealed to for an answer to these inquiries. Sparta, Athens, Rome, Carthage, were all republics, two of them, Athens and Carthage, of the commercial kind. Yet they were as often engaged in wars, offensive and defensive, as the neighboring monarchies of the same times. Sparta was little better than well-regulated camp, and Rome was never sated of carnage and conquest. Carthage, though a commercial republic, was the aggressor in the very war that ended in her destruction. Hannibal had carried her arms into the heart of Italy and to the gates of Rome before Scipio. In turn, gave them an overthrow in the territories of Carthage and made a conquest of the Commonwealth. Venice, in later times, figured more than once in wars of ambition, till becoming an object to the other Italian states. Pope Julius II found means to accomplish that formidable league, which gave us a deadly blow to the power and pride of this haughty republic. Providence in Holland, till they were overwhelmed in debt and taxes, took a leading and conspicuous part in the wars of Europe. They had furious contest with England for the dominion of the sea, and more among the most perversing and the most implacable of the opponents of Louis XIV. In the government of Britain, the representatives of the people composed one branch of the national legislature. Commerce has been for ages the predominant pursuit of that country. Few nations, nevertheless, have been more frequently engaged in war, and the wars in which that kingdom has been engaged have, in numerous instances, proceeded from the people. There have been, if I may so express it, almost as many popular in the royal wars. The cries of the nation and opportunities of their representative have, upon various occasions, dragged their monarchs into war, or continued them in it, contrary to their inclinations and sometimes contrary to their real interest to the state, in that memorable struggle for superiority between the rival houses of Austria and Bourbon, which so long kept Europe in a flame. It is well known that the antipathies of the English against the French, seconding the ambition of rather the avarice of a favorable leader, protracted the war beyond the limits marked out by sound policy and for a considerable time in opposition to the views of the court. The wars of these two last mentioned nations have in a great measure grown out of commercial considerations. The desire of supplanting and the fear of being supplanted, either in particular branches of traffic or in the general advantages of trade and navigation. From this summary of what has taken place in other countries, whose situations have borne the nearest resemblance of our own, what reason can we have to confide in those rivalries, which should seduce us into the expectation of peace and cordiality between the members of the present Confederacy in a state of separation? Have we not already seen through the fallacy and extravagance of those idle theories which have amused us with promises of an exemption from the imperfections, weakness, and evils incited to society of every shape? It is not time to awake from the deceitful dream of the Golden Age, and to adopt as a practical maxim for the direction of our political conduct that we, as well as other inhabitants of the globe, are not yet remote from the happy empire to perfect wisdom and perfect virtue. Let the point of extreme depression to which our national dignity and credit have sunk, let the inconveniences felt everywhere from a lax of an ill administration of government, let the revolt of a part of the state of North Carolina, the late menacing disturbances of Pennsylvania, and the actual insurrections and rebellions in Massachusetts declare. So far, in the general sense of mankind, from corresponding with the tenets of those who endeavor to lull asleep our apprehensions of discord and hostility between the states, in the event of disunion, that it has, from long observation of progress of society, become a part of the axiom in politics. That vicinity or nearness of situation constitutes nations' natural enemies. An intelligent writer expresses himself on this subject to this effect. Neighboring nations, says he, are naturally enemies of each other unless their common weaknesses forces them to league in a confederate republic, and their constitution prevents the differences that neighboring occasions existing, that secret jealousy which disposes all states to aggrandize themselves at the expense of their neighbors. This passage at the same time points out the evil and suggests the remedy. So there we go. Throughout history, we can see how countries that live next to each other, that reside next to each other, go at each other. And I think this is the vision that the founding members of the Constitution are envisioning our country on this side of the water. With us being so close, by staying separate, we get our own personal reflections that satisfy our basic needs, right? Because everybody has different needs and different interests. And it's those seeds that, when developed over time, can create certain animosities and conflict between neighbors. And we see even in our own neighborhoods, right? There are individuals that we live next door to who what? Do we like all our neighbors? Right? Do we, in a condo, right? Because I like to see America as one giant condo, being run by, one of those condo governing bodies. And there are neighbors that we don't agree with, right? But we have a singular purpose by all of us living in that condo unit, is to make sure that collectively our neighborhood is safe. And I think of that on that level in regards to the United States. We're one big condo, right? Multi-division, separated into separate sections. But by being united together, the complexities that is involved in that, we are under the guidance that we all want to be safe. We all want to eat. We all want to protect ourselves. So we do collectively what we can to do just that. And it would be better to be in one united neighborhood than in different sections. That though we put up walls to separate each other, just like the way dogs, they don't like fences. Because what happens? They don't know what's on the other side. So they get, because they know that somebody's behind there. So that uncertainty develops anxiety. But they don't want that for the country. For this new country. They don't want that. We shouldn't be building up walls. We shouldn't be extending our hand to our neighbors. We should be working together. And that is why it's important that in establishing this new government, this new United States of America, that we're all together on this side of the water. So it's better for us to work together, to live together, to do together, than to remain separate. It's not a heavy lift to think that way. Even though there are those right now that prefer us separate and unequal. Well, still got a lot to go through. I want to thank you for listening. And I'm hoping that you're getting something for this, because I sure as hell am. Seeing what in context and the importance. America's not perfect. But we're, with this, the prospect of what we can achieve is limitless if we work together to do it. And that's what they're trying to convey here. I see it. I'm understanding. And I hope you do too. We'll be right back with some more Good Cup of Joe.